November 12th. We're also doing, in conjunction with the Place of Hope, the Freedom Forum for Youth Excellence. We'll be taking 50 of the most at-risk girls here in Rochester and walking with them for a whole year. It's a program we're bringing in. Our first sponsor, our speaker, will be November 12th, rented out the Damon City Center. Star Parker is the keynote speaker for that event. You can sponsor a girl if you have a business, or we have a lot of churches and different organizations that sponsor a girl, like I said. And if you want more information about that, we can let you know. The sponsors, starting at $250, it gives you 2 tickets to a dinner gala event that will be there that evening as well. If you want to just have dinner with Star, you can buy a ticket. It's $50 and she'll be speaking at the dinner event as well. Let's see. Because we at the Frederick Douglass Foundation are an organization that seeks to educate the population, I want to read you a passage by a former Democrat and Chronicle writer, Michael Walsh. This was posted on October 18th on the Corner blog, National Review. His comments were about Saul Alinsky's methods being used here in Rochester in the 1960s and now again today throughout the country with the Occupy Wall Street protests that are daily growing more and more violent. For those unfamiliar with Alinsky, he was a communist, Russian organizers in the 50s and 60s, trying to weaken the United States from within on behalf of the masters of the USSR. Hillary Clinton did her thesis on the man, and Barack Obama used to teach his methods of community organizing in Chicago. So here's Michael Walsh, what he had to say. Excuse me. In case you haven't figured it out by now, what's going on in Washington and across the country is the full Alinsky, brought to you by the same malcontents who have been awaiting this moment for more than 40 years. It's been a long time wandering in the desert for the 60s left. But this is their moment, this is their time, as somebody or other from Palamus once said, the great man himself was already there, attending the organization for 2 years by the time I got to Rochester, New York in the fall of 1967 to attend the Eastman School of Music. His target was the Eastman Kodak Company, and his human battering rams were members of the city's black community, which had exploded in riots in 1964. In the wake of the unrest, Rochester was already visibly on the side of Alinsky when Alinsky got there, whipsawing both the black neighborhoods, which had largely been the old Jewish neighborhoods, and useful idiots of the Rochester Area Council of Churches to hack away the city's then prosperous business community and its waspy leadership. Alinsky rode into town on a one-trick pony that the left has since turned into a war horse. Agitate one side's grievances and appeal to the other side's decency of gullibility in order to provoke the establishment, whose reaction will unite the other two. Then the community organizer charges in on his nag-turned steed and proceeds to set the rot in motion under the banner of progress. It is the very devil's work, and Alinsky certainly made a splendid devil, unconspicuous and whiny at the time, and always casting himself as the real heroic victim, standing for progress, when in fact he was particularly nasty, cowardly, kind of cultural vandal. Here he is talking to Playboy about the days in Rochester. Alinsky, quote unquote. In the aftermath of the riots, the Rochester Area Council of Churches, a predominantly white body of liberal clergymen, invited us in to organize the black community and agreed to pay all of our expenses. We said then we didn't speak for the blacks, and we wouldn't come in unless we were invited in by the black community itself. At first, there seemed little interest in the ghetto, but once again, the old reliable establishment came to the rescue by overreacting, cutting its own throat. The minute the invitation was made public, the town's power structure exploded in paroxysms of rage. The mayor joined the city's 2 newspapers, both party both part of the conservative Gannett chain, in denouncing me as a subversive hate monger. Radio station Wham delivered 1-minute editorial tirades against me, talking about Alinsky, and told the ministers who'd invited me that from now on they'd have to pay for their own previously free Sunday morning airtime. A settlement house that had pledged its support to us was promptly informed by the community chest that its funds would be cut off if it went ahead. The board retracted its support, with several members resigning. The establishment acted as if the golden horde of Khan was camped on its doorstep. If you listen to public comments, you'd have thought I spent my spare time feeding poisoned milk bones to seeing eye dogs. It was the nicest thing they could have done for me, of course. Overnight, the black community broke out of its apathy and started clamoring for us to come in. As one black man told me later, I just wanted to see somebody who could freak those mothers out like that. Black civil rights leaders, local bloc organizations, and ministers, plus 13,000 individuals signed petitions asking me to come in. And what kind of support? And with that kind of support, we were rolling. I assigned my associate, Ed Chambers, as chief organizer in Rochester and prepared to visit the city myself once his efforts were underway. Playboy, was your reception as hostile as your advanced publicity? Alinsky, oh yeah, I wasn't disappointed. I think they would have quarantined me at the airport if they could have. When I got off the plane, a bunch of local reporters were waiting for me, keeping the same distance as tourists in a leper colony. I remember one of them asking me what right I had to start meddling in the black community after everything Kodak had done for quote-unquote them, and I replied, maybe I'm uninformed, but as far as I know, the only thing Kodak has done on race issues in America is to introduce color film. My relationship with Kodak was to remain on that plane. Most of this is hokum, of course, designed to stick a papier-mâché halo atop Old Nick's horns. The Gannett newspaper, the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle, for which I worked as a police reporter, federal court reporter, a classical music critic from 1972 to 1977, and the Times-Union were harmless, inoffensive, white guy, country club publications. They did some excellent journalism. The Times-Union won a Pulitzer in 1972 for its coverage of the Attica prison riots, and a whole bunch of folks graduated from Rochester and went on to do great things. The notion that Rochester reporters would treat Alinsky like a leper is a typical leftist lie. Setting the template, Alinsky organized a front group called Fight, the martial imagery so beloved of the peaceful and tolerant left always makes me laugh. Freedom, integration, God, honor today. That's what the Fight started for. And then they introduced guilt-ridden white liberals to join the fight, the Friends of Fight, to finance the scam. The reference to God, coming from a man who in part dedicated his book, Rules for Radicals, to Lucifer, was a nice touch. But the key to Alinskyism is the whipsaw, a constantly shifting moral center that can argue both sides of the issue at the same time. Thus, Alinsky's love child, Barack Obama, can boast of being rich and siding with the 99% simultaneously. Attack him as one, and he'll say he's really the other. Just look at the Obama administration is doing now, claiming to suspend the Class Act of Obamacare, which is the long-term care aspect, while the president swears to defend it. Intellectually absurd, but emotionally perfect pitch. Barry, as the eternal outsider, battling the dark forces. For Alinsky, always needs a villain, even if the villain is Alinsky himself. But what do you expect from the political philosophy that claims up is really down, in is really out, and black is really white? Alinsky forces the right to always be on defense, shadowboxing in the halls of mirrors against a foe whose moral turpitude it refuses to credit. If Alinsky stood for anything, it was like Lucifer, destruction. The left's rage is animated by its lust for demolition, and the sooner the right stops accepting its pretenses, the quicker the real battle can be engaged. Take Rochester today. Take a glorious moment and hard look and creativity, the city that gave the world Kodak, Xerox, Bosch and Lomb, Ragu spaghetti sauce, Susan B. Anthony, Frederick Douglass, George Eastman, the country's best pizza, Jenny Cream, and Nick Tahoe's garbage plate is just another post-Alinsky ruin, shorn of its heritage and condemned by its weather. If you want to see the future of America under the shade of Saul Alinsky, Rochester is a good place to start. As for Alinsky, somebody should turn the tables. Instruct the right how to use the principles against him. It's the only way to beat his ghost and his hate-filled love children. And that's the end of Michael Walsh's post. I wanted to highlight the piece because it explains a lot. I wasn't around in 1967, but Alinsky was. So when addressing the candidates tonight, I thought you might want to keep in mind what has happened to the black community in Rochester since the 60s, because we have to acknowledge the black community isn't better than it was back then when Alinsky came in to organize it. Unemployment is through the roof. Functional illiteracy is even higher. Abortion, unwed mothers, one of the worst in the country. Our goal is to help lift people out of poverty by teaching them to use their own God-given talents to do so. Part of that is to turn off the resentment and entitlement mentality that Alinsky instilled in them. The resentment is what holds them back and masks their talents, and that's what perpetuates poverty. Are these candidates going to continue to enable the collective defeatism in our communities in order to use the resentment to maintain power over them, or are they willing to stand up and offer an alternative? One last thing about tonight, we'll go through, give each candidate time to speak, and then you can go ahead and we'll take a couple questions, and then afterwards, which I don't think I told you, there's a basket that has numbers. After they're all done speaking, we'll open it up and you guys can ask them any questions that you'd like. And we're just kind of going to go in order by the numbers picked so that it's easy and we don't have to keep track of whose hands are raised up every time. And then one last thing, by becoming a member of FDF, you become directly involved in shaping the important issues to keep our community strong and ensure voices are heard. Our grassroots network of community activists go across the country from New York to Hawaii. New York is the youngest of the groups. This is our 1-year anniversary month. The foundation could not have fulfilled its commitment to helping every citizen have a voice in the government. Without our members, the Frederick Douglass Foundation is proud to inform you that collectively our hands on work to safeguard the Republic and educate the masses has led to an increase in civic engagement. This year, we held our 3rd annual Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C., produced the 2011 edition of the Freedom Calendar. There's one back there. You can go ahead and take one. We've been cited in a number of media articles across the country, included and the official documents, which led to the passing of Arizona's Bill 2443, which criminalized abortions based on the sex or race of a fetus. Your participation and dues make these and other valuable services possible. Every member strengthens the Foundation's political clout. Even if you don't have time to personally be involved, your membership and support the actions of the Foundation members who work for a better government. As a member, you make everything we do possible, so I hope you consider becoming a member today and help us continue to grow. You can also feel free to make donations, buy a t-shirt. We have some t-shirts that we just made. They're $25. I also want to take time to humbly thank those of you who are already members. And regarding this night's events, we'll start off with Andre Barnett, and he can come up and I guess tell you about himself however he would like.